Welcome to A Blind Date with Knowledge, Series 2. We're hosting research discussions across the region. I'm your host, Laura Brady. Today I'm joined by the talented and passionate Mr Enoch Akowuah, who is committed to ameliorating outcomes and is at the forefront of cardiosurgical innovation here at James Cook. Hi Enoch.
How are you, Laura? You okay?
Yes, I'm very well. Just a little bit of background about yourself. What drew you to cardiology and specifically surgery? Was it something that was in you from the start? Did you have to learn skills, or was it something you were naturally sort of oriented towards?
Yeah, so I guess first of all I was drawn towards surgery rather than cardiac surgery specifically.
Okay.
Training has changed completely now, but when I trained, you didn't have to make those decisions as early as you do now. Certainly towards the end of my training as a medical student and then in my first year as a house officer, it was clear to me that I wasn't going to make a very good physician.
Okay. So what was that told you that? What were the telltale signs?
I just liked the immediacy of surgery, really. The fact that you can intervene and see an outcome fairly quickly. You could just see that immediate quality of life improvement in your patient. That was quite attractive to me.
Yeah.
And I think a lot of people have put off surgery because they feel they can't do it because it looks complicated. And I think everybody has that. But I think once you get over that, surgery is actually quite an attractive thing to do.
Yeah.
That's kind of how I got drawn towards surgery. And then but I always liked medicine, and so the combination of medicine and surgery, cardiac surgery was the obvious specialty really to get into.
Having that practical sort of outcome orientated approach.
Yeah, and having the sort of medicine that comes with that in terms of looking after the patients, intensive care, working up the patients, or all the medicine that's needed to make the right decision. So it was just it's like having the best of both worlds, really.
Yeah. So do you find that your skills are naturally aligned with that? Was there any part of your skill set that you thought, in order to do this, I'm going to have to work on this more?
Well, I think, yeah, absolutely, because it then takes 7 years to train how to actually do the operation. So it's one thing saying I quite like this. It's quite another thing learning how to do it. So of course, all those skills that I need to do an operation now, I've acquired painstakingly over years and years and years.
There's no quick fix for
that. No. So I've in that time I've gained lots and lots of new skills, which is what allows me to do my job safely.
Yeah, and I have looked at a lot of the things that you have worked on throughout your career, and it's really amazing. I've seen a lot of different conversations when you just...
Yeah, well, I think innovation's really exciting, and certainly what I've tried to do throughout my career is innovate. So I've been here for 10 years, and when I arrived, there was no beating heart surgery, and that was an innovation that I introduced. Then we did minimally invasive coronary artery bypass surgery. It's called mid-cap. That was a new innovation. Minimally invasive aortic valve surgery was a new innovation that I led around 2015, and then finally minimally invasive mitral valve surgery. So I have tried to kind of do new stuff throughout, and it's good. It's good for the patients. It's good for me because it keeps me interested and engaged and refreshed and all that sort of stuff. And of course, we're here to talk about research. When you're innovating, research and innovation goes hand in hand because you're always assessing what you're doing and the impact it's having on the patient. So, yeah, it just sort of it makes for a varied and very interesting career. Yeah,
exactly. I mean, it can go anywhere really with research. You never know what you're learning until you learn it. So, what sort of things are here kind of in place that enabled those surgeries to kind of come through and to be? I
think one of the reasons why I came to work here in this particular hospital is that it's a very good cardiac surgery department and cardiology department, to be honest. So, good team working is really important to allow everything, research, innovation. You have to have people who are supportive and who enable those things to be done. So a very good example of that is in 2014 we wanted to do a trial of conventional versus minimally invasive aortic valve surgery, we 3 of my 7 colleagues trained in the minimally invasive approach, and the other colleagues essentially allowed us to do all the aortic valve operations in order to train and then deliver the trial.
Yeah.
Now, that's quite a lot of teamwork there, where people kind of give up elements of their practice to facilitate that, and that's the kind of thing that works well here and doesn't work well in other places. So,
definitely, with the research mindset, you need to have that sort of aligned team goal and mindset.
Absolutely, I think everybody kind of identifying this as an important thing to do and making the allowances to allow it to happen is absolutely key.
So, can you tell me a bit about the team that you pulled together for the trip to Kumasi that you had?
All right, so that's totally different.
Yeah, but talking in terms of teamwork and like how you pull people together and what makes a collaborative effort from
so Kumasi is quite a different challenge, because of course we're going somewhere where there's no cardiac surgery and really very little infrastructure, and we're trying to deliver something quite complex, which is successful, safe cardiac surgery, and to deliver that in a sustainable way. So as you say, same principles. You need lots of people working together to achieve that aim. And actually, like always, the doctor's skill is some of it, but actually the non-doctor skills are just absolutely key. So the technical support we have, whether it's from operating department assistants or our scrub nurses or our perfusionists, or even Joel Dunning, who did a lot of the logistics in terms of kind of transport and visas and getting registered with the Ghana Medical Council and stuff. You need everybody. You need all the right people, all delivering, at a very high standard to deliver that successfully.
I see what you mean there. There's a bit that was a bigger challenge. That team had many different obstacles to kind of overcome. Definitely,
absolutely, and a massive learning curve. Of course, we're all going to a new environment, so lots to learn as well. Very open-minded people who are willing to kind of take on challenges, and that's what we were lucky enough to put together as a team. Yeah,
and do you feel that? How did that go for you? What was the outcome of that?
Well, I mean, you can see my office looks like this because we're going to Ghana in about 10 days.
Oh, so there's another trip planned.
So that's why my office looks as it is, with everything on the floor. But no, Ghana was great. Of course, we did our first mission to Ghana. That was a kind of big fact-finding mission. We did lots of operations then. We identified the 2 things we needed to do was cardiac surgery and pacemaker services, because that was something we felt was very simple and of course was immediately life-changing. We knew the team needed training, so we brought the team back to the UK for 2 months to train them, and then we went back again and allowed the team to operate with a lot more autonomy, and they started doing their first procedures independently, which is great. And at that time we put in a 2-year plan to train the team to become totally autonomous, but of course then COVID happened, and so we haven't been back. So this trip back for us is really kind of emotional reconnection, really. What's been amazing is that in the 2 years that we haven't been back, the pacemaker service has been running autonomously. So the guys have done over 20 pacemakers. So it's great to say it's great that we've been there, done something, left, and actually lives have been saved because of what we left. So that's really exciting. But we're going back in 10 days to reconnect and to reassess where we are and make a new plan going forward.
Yeah, it's really amazing to see that happening. I think one of the reasons why I did want to ask you about that was because it's a really good demonstration of kind of why we're involved with research and kind of in pursuit of improved and best sort of practice. And actually there's one thing kind of learning what that is and understanding what it is, but it's another thing to share it and ensure that it is actually being implemented in the situations that it's needed in. So best of luck with that trip. How long will you be going?
We're going for a week. So we need all the luck.
I think it's the passion and the motivation as well that drives you forward.
Definitely, we're all very excited about it.
Oh, great. So I think if we move on to talking about the mini mitral trial, to my knowledge, I'm not sure, you can correct me if I'm wrong, it was quite difficult to get set up, or was it a bit of I guess. I
think also for those who don't know, mini mitral is a trial that compares conventional stenotomy to a small mini thoracotomy to repair a mitral valve that's leaking.
Yeah.
And mini mitral's been around for some time, but uptake in the UK and across the world has been really limited because people have not really seen the evidence that it's better.
So is
than
that, do you
conventional
think,
surgery.
so for you it's lack of evidence that is causing this?
Yeah, so I think that's only one aspect. I mean, there are other things. It's technically challenging, so there's quite a long learning curve.
As you said, there's no quick route to that.
No.
So for people who kind of shy away from that sort of manual aspect and responsibility, that it can be hard to.
Yeah, no, that's right. So I think not everybody can do a minimally invasive mitral valve repair. What's changed though is that it's more and more people are doing it, and increasingly NICE and the latest NICE guidance, which was published about 3 months ago, NICE has essentially said that anyone who needs a mitral valve should be offered a minimally invasive option, and if they can't have it, then they can move surgeons or move hospitals to find it. So there's an increasing recognition that it's an important option for patients and that it might have significant benefit for patients. So that's the real driver behind the trial, really, is to establish whether mini mitral is as safe as conventional surgery and whether there are any benefits for patients.
And hopefully that, creating that sort of evidence base will lead to a bigger accumulation of people who can be trained in this area.
Absolutely. I think the evidence base will change the guidelines, and then the guidelines will drive practice. So that's what we hope. We hope that it, in terms of impact, that's what we're looking for with the trial. It is a challenging trial because, of course, I've just alluded to, you need to cope with expertise, so it means the trial design is a bit complex. So you don't want people who can't do the mini operation doing the mini operation in the trial. So the trial design is complex to accommodate that. So that did make sort of delivery a bit more challenging. And of course, we've had 2 years of a pandemic as well, and so everyone who's been running a clinical trial has been challenged. But the great news is that we've done it, and we've recruited, and the patients are in follow-up, and we'll hope that by the end of this year we'll have the data, we'll be presenting and publishing the data.
So how many did you get in the recruitment process in the end?
330 patients.
So it
recruited.
wasn't too affected then by the...
No, we managed. We have recruited the target sample size for the trial, so it's completed successfully.
Oh, that's good to hear. Yeah, because there was a lot of disruption there.
Yeah, no, huge. And of course, because mitral valve surgery tends to be elective surgery, the thing that's been most affected by a pandemic is elective surgery, and so it did have a significant impact on the trial.
So when it comes to designing the question, there's a few different parties that were looking at the results of this trial. So how did you eventually kind of come up with the outcome measures that were to be measured that kind of satisfied all those parties?
Yeah, so you're right. So that's really difficult and really, really easy at the same time.
Okay.
So it's really, really difficult because if you talk to lots of different people, they want different outcomes. So surgeons are really interested in surgical outcomes.
And when you're saying different people here, just to clarify, you mean in sort of from the clinical side of...
I meant different constituencies. So I'm thinking cardiologists, I'm thinking cardiac surgeons, I'm thinking, physicians. So everybody wants different things. But ultimately, mini mitral is answering the question that the patients decided was
and this
the
is
most
what I was going to
important.
ask you about, because you ended up having the design based on an outcome that was identified in a patient panel.
Exactly, that's right. So when we talk to stakeholders, doctors and surgeons, they all wanted to know things like repair rates and bleeding,
which
and
all quantified by very different measures depending on the area that they come from.
Precisely, but patients really were just interested in getting better quickly after surgery. Its return to normality was the biggest thing that came across in all our PPI engagement exercises. So and we chose that. And interestingly, that's quite hard to defend with funding panels. Funding panels have got so used to giving money to fund questions that doctors ask that when you...
It's very hard. I see where you said before it's hard, but it's also very simple at the same time, because obviously that's the simplest question to answer, like what it's
important to the patient. So funding panels don't like it, but anyway, thankfully the NIHR were very receptive to that, and we were able to defend that choice of primary outcome, and so the primary outcome is essentially the rate of return to baseline physical activity.
So, because it tends to complicate a study when you have too many sort of different measured outcomes, and obviously you have your primary, secondary. So, can you see an effect of sort of collaborating those outcomes with certain other specialities? I'm just thinking of a trial I spoke to David Austin about, where it was sort of a crossover cancer and cardio trial, where they're trialling sort of cardio drugs to lessen the effects of chemotherapy and things like that. So have you had any experience of trials where you have been able to sort of comprise and collaborate those outcomes?
Yeah, I mean, you can have co-primary outcomes where you look at two different things. I mean, in general though, unless you're doing a very, very large trial, it's usually reasonable to kind of just pick one question to answer.
But that is a randomised control trial, right? It's one question with a defined data set, so it doesn't afford for those sort of large scale.
Yeah, that's right. I mean, although we're planning another trial at the moment called Protect, which is currently we're asking for funding to the NIHR, so the application's in. And Protect has what we call an umbrella design. Essentially what we've got is a number of trials with an overarching trial design to allow us to answer a number of questions, and so that's one way of doing. So the buzzword is efficient trial design. So umbrella trials allow you to kind of, in a sense, use the same trial to answer multiple questions.
Yeah.
So that's how you do that.
I think the options with regard to trial design as well have really been opened as a result of COVID trials, and the way that sort of adaptive study design has come in.
Absolutely,
that will be able to be a benefit to lots of other areas as well.
That's right. I think Protect, if funded, will be one of the first umbrella trials in cardiac surgery, and I haven't seen many cardiac surgery trials that have adaptive design.
See, I don't have an awareness of this, so that would be one of the first sort of times you've seen that happen in the cardiac.
Absolutely.
Okay.
So I agree. I think some of the new efficient trial methodology will be really key going forward. Yeah.
So, can I ask you about the patient panel process? How do you go about that? Was it from your patients? Do you already know?
The thing with PPI is that what I've learned over the years is you have to do lots and lots of different PPI.
Yeah.
So it's always, I think, not dangerous, but it can be misleading if you pick one panel and then you think you've got a sense of everything the patients need.
Yeah.
So I for most of my trials, I tend to have 3 or 4 or 5 different panels. The consumer panel from RDS is really good. Because they come to these questions. That's the
research design service from the NIHR.
Correct. Yeah. Okay. So there's a good consumer panel. They're brilliant. From my point of view, they have very little cardiac exposure. So it's quite good to talk to them because they come at it quite differently from the panels that include, say, patients. So I also have panels of patients who've had surgery or about to have surgery. The other really good resource that I use is I was part of a priority setting partnership which was run in cardiac surgery by James Lind Alliance. It's funded by Heart Research UK, and in that process we identified the top 10 research questions in cardiac surgery, and that process involves quite a lot of patients and relatives and lay members. Once we identify those priorities, we form what's called clinical study groups to design trials to answer those questions. Okay,
so it's like a subset of the panel.
Exactly, and that contains a lot of patients. So I've used that resource quite a bit.
I see.
And those patients are slightly different in that they have a bit more cardiac experience and cardiac knowledge, but of course their knowledge is invaluable. So I think the key message is use lots of different PPI.
Yeah, you
get different things, and sometimes they reinforce themes, which is really helpful. So, for example, in Protect, we're looking at anticoagulation after mitral valve repair, and traditionally, surgeons and clinicians have always been interested in what's the risk of bleeding and what's the risk of clotting as different things. One being risk of safety, one being a risk of efficacy. But actually, when we did the panels, consistently patients were telling us it didn't matter. They wanted to combine the two because actually they were saying if I have a stroke from a bleed or I have a stroke from a clot, it doesn't really matter.
From a patient
I've had a stroke.
Experience, it's a very similar experience.
So exactly right. Whilst doctors are really obsessed with kind of was there bleeding, and so we've got a combined primary outcome that combines those two. And that was a really key, consistent theme throughout all the different PPIs that we did.
I think this for me as well, it's sort of, that's we are a national health service, so it does come under what we can do for other people. Next, I wanted to ask you about the accelerometer in the mini mitral trial, as sort of being one of the links with industry, but also kind of what sort of benefits are afforded from that particular advice, and also others of its kind for the patient, for the data analyst, for people like yourselves.
So using what sense-aware devices they're called in cardiac surgery trials is relatively new. and when we publish, we hope to be one of the first groups who have actually used it in a clinical trial in this way.
Yeah, I've never seen anything like it before when I've been reading.
We're actually using it in another trial called PREPS, which is looking at rehabilitating patients. So the question is, if you get patients in and exercise them and optimise them prior to surgery, do they do better?
I think I've read something about this. One of my colleagues, Sarah, was looking at it.
So we're using accelerometers and PREPS as well. So broadly, they're new. We're learning how to use them. They've changed since we designed the trial. So now, when we design both UK mini mitral and PREPS, these devices, patients had to wear them. Then you have to tick off the patients and download the data. Now, the accelerometers can give you live data, and patients can interact with it, etc., etc. So it's a really exciting new field. Whether we can use them in trials or not, we don't know. And PREPS and UK mini mitral will be inform that. Can you use these devices to look at patients recovering after surgery, and can you use it to answer research questions?
Because you get sort of almost continuous or like semi-continuous data from these.
Yeah, you get continuous data. Yes, so you're able to look at the level of activity. Is it high, moderate, or low? There's sleep efficiency. You can look at a whole raft of outcomes.
I think for me what's really interesting about this is the fact that many people sort of, never mind being a patient, are just wearing these devices anyway. These Fitbits,
I think that's right.
And all of these
things.
That's right. So, it's technology that's already sort of integrated into lifestyle. So if we're not using it sort of in a hospital setting or to sort of provide that best care, then why not?
No, correct. And I think 10 years ago everyone would have been worried about patient compliance, and certainly when we designed mini mitral, it was one of the big things. All patients wear them for 7 days, and actually it just hasn't been a problem because, as you say, patients are used to wearing these devices.
It's kind of integrated.
Yeah. So, and I think they're exciting because they'll have applications throughout the pathway. They'll have applications, as I said, for pre-rehabilitation, for optimising patients, for surgery. They'll have applications for rehabilitation, so patients have their operation and they're getting better. The ability to monitor that will be really key. Can they predict complications? So can you look at someone's level of activity and predict that in 2 days' time they'll have a chest infection because they're doing less, etc., etc. So I think they're really exciting. I don't think we understand their potential yet.
Not at all. I don't think we could really begin to do that because there is such a plethora of different outcomes that you could really measure.
I agree.
And it will obviously depend on the device, the company, the trial, which sort of, like you said, not just which speciality it is, but which person you are in that speciality, what sort of parameters you're going to look at. So
absolutely. So I'm really excited about the accelerometer data. So you talked about industry. So I guess the thing is, it's expensive. It's definitely more expensive than the questionnaire, which is sort of how we traditionally measured things like physical activity and stuff like that. I think partnering with industry to make it affordable, etc., is another key aspect.
Well, I will propose this question to my contact at the Horizon Centre and see what their take on that is, because we'll have a lot of investigational medicinal products trials, whereas we have a lot of device trials as well, but these sorts of devices are probably going to be like at the forefront of what's sort of next for research and like the next sort of innovative data collection methods that we'll have.
Yeah, I agree.
So do you have any advice about sort of collating trials and what leads you to your next project? How do you sort of engage with the results that you've had and know kind of the direction that you're going to take next?
Yeah, so one of the benefits of being a clinician researcher is that actually it's just your day job. So it's dead easy. For me, Protect came about because I have a patient and I think, they've got into AF after the mitral valve repair. Am I going to give them warfarin or DOAC? I actually don't know. And then you go and look at the data and like, actually there's no data. And then there's a question.
Let's make some data.
So I mean, I think that's why it's so important, for clinicians to have, I'm a big fan of clinician researchers rather than research clinicians, if that makes sense. So the emphasis, because that's where you get the most important questions that are going to have an impact straight away.
So it sounds like when you have that sort of mindset and you're a clinician researcher, then you never have to go looking for a question.
No, you don't.
They present themselves.
Yeah, exactly. We introduced mini AVRs, a new operation here. We did 50 operations. We all thought, this is brilliant. Okay, but what's the evidence? Well, there isn't any. Well, we need a trial. There you go. So I think that's right. I mean, I don't look much further than my patients for questions to answer.
Oh, no, it's great to hear. I think that is the research bug, and that curiosity. Once you have it, once the light's on, it doesn't really go off. You're on the train now. Yeah. So, lastly, would you have any advice for people who are kind of collating trials, or maybe in a trial setup, and they would like to sort of increase engagement, so sort of participation, dissemination about what's going on with it?
Yeah.
Because I know you've had like a lot of successes with the trials that you've had. So what would sort of be your stance on that?
Yeah, and I think that's always a challenge with your trial. Keep it alive, keep people interested. Clinical trials are hard things to deliver, particularly on a multi-centre basis. So,
I mean, it's something very, very new, like the things that you're doing.
Yeah. So I use social media a lot, actually. I think that's a really important new tool. I think, UK Media Monitor has a website. We have a Twitter handle.
Great website, by the way. I think dissemination is one of the most overlooked things, and having a digestible website that has a lot of information but also patient experience really is great. So
I think that's really helpful. So I use social media a lot to promote the trials that I'm involved in, and to disseminate findings from other people's trials.
Comes again to like living in the world that we're in.
Yeah, absolutely.
Really use
Exactly.
what's there available.
Exactly. Yeah.
Oh, great. Well, best of luck with your endeavours for the next time.
Thank you.
Hopefully,
We'll be doing lots of blogs with Ghana. We'll be putting on the hospital website and stuff. So look out for them. And,
I will do. If I can put a link to those on this podcast episode for you as well.
Brilliant.
So
very good.
Great. Well, thank you very much.
That's all right.
Thanks for listening. As always, please get in touch if you have any feedback. Catch you next time.